Hey there, welcome back to Antoinette Reads. If you're new here, I'm Antoinette Reads, and on this channel, we make reading hot again. Whether you're a long-time listener or just stumbling upon this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram where I post updates and upload schedules. Alright, let's get started. Chapter 7. Hexes and Hippogriffs. The days dragged on as normal, cold, grey mornings and long, dull evenings that seemed to drain everyone's mood. Hermione walked leisurely up the stone steps towards the castle, humming quietly to herself. Small flower buds were emerging from the frosty ground, dotting the grass with bursts of color. It had been a few weeks since she'd been elected for head girl alongside Draco Malfoy, and things had been surprisingly uneventful. It hadn't necessarily been awful, but it was rather odd and quiet without the chatter of her fellow Gryffindors. Draco, on the other hand, had been finding things far too normal for his liking. He spent most days in class or in his bedroom, spending as little time in contact with Hermione as possible. It was much easier to be his usual bitter self that way. After entering the castle, Hermione arrived at the common room and hung her coat up on the back of the door. She could hear running water coming from the bathroom as she collapsed onto the sofa, scowling at the mess that surrounded her. Her roommate had obviously been studying and had very kindly left his books scattered across the table. Messy and annoying, she muttered, shaking her head in disbelief. Can this boy get any worse? Letting out a sigh, she snatched the books up from the table and marched over to Draco's room. Malfoy, for goodness sake, can you— Hey! Draco yelled as she burst in, grabbing his shirt and clutching it to his bare chest. Granger, what the fuck? Hermione froze, her mouth opening and closing like a goldfish. Stood before her was a very shocked Malfoy, wearing nothing but his boxers. Books, mess, was all she could make out as her eyes tried to look anywhere but his shirtless form. I was just— Get out! He exploded, and she quickly scurried back outside, muttering an apology. Once the door was safely shut, she rested her back against it, trying her best to catch her breath. Her hand reached up to touch her cheek, and she groaned when she found it was sizzling hot. Could things get any worse at this point? Deciding it was best just to forget about it, she trudged back into her room, only reappearing when she heard the boy cluttering around in the kitchen. Hermione could feel Draco's eyes burning the back of her head as she walked into the room. She ignored them, picking up a book and flicking through the pages. She saw him turn back to what he was doing in the corner of her eye, and gave him a quick glance, holding her breath. She wasn't really sure why she was staring, but after seeing what she'd just seen, she couldn't seem to stop picturing it. He was certainly more muscular than she'd expected. Not excessively, but it seemed he at least kept in good shape. Could you please stop gawking at me, Granger? Hermione quickly looked away, feeling her cheeks flare up again. I was looking out the window. The boy raised his eyebrows. Why are you blushing then? I'm not blushing. Draco scoffed. Granger, have you forgotten that I can see you? Hermione shook her brown hair over her shoulders, crossing her arms defiantly. I don't know what you're talking about, she huffed, but we have a meeting soon, so you best hurry up. Draco muttered something to himself, but simply rolled his eyes and walked off into the bathroom. Probably to get ready, Hermione thought. She slid further into her seat, letting out a deep sigh. Soon they would have their first proper meeting with the professors, and she hoped to God Draco would behave. Ah, Mr. Malfoy, Miss Granger, so glad you can join us. The two students smiled meekly at their headmaster. Before them was a round dining table scattered with various elegant candles and plates of hors d'oeuvres. Please, sit, Dumbledore spoke calmly. We have plenty to get on with. Once seated, Hermione looked anxiously at Draco, who was being uncomfortably quiet. She gulped. Either the boy was simply used to formal atmospheres, or he had something up his sleeve. I trust that everyone is aware of our new head boy and girl. I thought it would be appropriate to invite them to discuss school matters with us." He smiled warmly, to which Hermione and Draco nodded. "Let's begin." The meeting was long and dull. Draco and Hermione listened to the parts regarding their roles, but zoned out for the rest, sipping their drinks politely. "Miss Granger, what do you think?" Hermione jolted, blinking uncertainty at Professor Flitwick. She had no clue what he was talking about, but she smiled sweetly nevertheless. "Regarding what, may I ask?" "Taking the hippogriff out of the Care of Magical Creatures curriculum," he replied. "There have been some complaints about them recently." "Oh," she began. "Well, I'd have to strongly disagree on that. You see, hippogriffs are a vital part of—" Hermione froze in embarrassment. "Excuse me, I was saying hippogriffs are—" Hermione coughed, her face flushing. Why now? Out of all the time she could have got the hiccups. She turned to look at Draco, who was covering his mouth in amusement, stifling a laugh. Slowly, her gaze panned down his body, where his hand lay on his lap, holding his wand. And it was pointing straight at her. Hermione's eyes grew as wide as saucers. Malfoy had hexed her with the hiccup charm. A bloody hiccup charm? "Miss Granger, are you all right?" Professor McGonagall frowned. Hermione was shooting daggers at Draco, trying to mouth something through aggressive hiccups. She was just about ready to be swallowed up by the ground when Malfoy himself finally spoke out. "I personally would have to strongly agree on the matter. Those bloody hippogriffs, are highly dangerous creatures." The professors eyed each other in confusion. "I see, Mr. Malfoy. A very interesting analogy," Dumbledore replied, with a hint of amusement. "I myself would have to agree with Miss Granger on this particular case." Hermione beamed at him, and the hiccuping stopped as Draco slunk moodily into his seat. "Well," laughed Professor Sprout, clapping her hands together, "I suppose that settles it. Hippogriff studies will be kept." The meeting was soon over. Hermione and Draco said their thank yous to their teachers and were soon on their way back to the common room. Hermione, who was walking slightly behind Malfoy, quickened her step to catch him up. He gave her an acknowledging glance, but said nothing. "I can't believe you hexed me in a meeting," she scowled in disbelief. "What, are you 12? He smiled mischievously. It was quite a scene. Draco grinned, watching Hermione mutter something at her feet. They continued to walk in silence for a while, until Hermione began to smile herself. "I'd forgotten about you and your bloody chicken," she giggled. Now it was Draco's turn to go red. "It was out of control," he scoffed. "Any normal person would have reacted the same." "Oh, please, I bet it was just a scratch," Hermione laughed mockingly. "I seem to recall you being the one that was so desperate for me to go to the hospital wing," he smirked, eyeing her triumphantly. "Touché." Hermione went quiet, shaking her head. "That was so Hagrid could keep his job, not because I was worried about you." "Who said anything about you being worried?" he sneered. "Oh, whatever, Malfoy." And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you found this video interesting, comment the channel's mantra, "Reading is hot," and give it a big thumbs up and share it with your friends. Love you guys. Bye.